Watch this.
We've heard from lawyers, legislators, and women affected by Idaho's abortion ban. Today, we hear from doctors.
As medical providers, these laws place us in impossible situations with just extremely difficult decisions.
Decisions that could have them facing criminal and civil consequences if they provide an abortion. There were lots of things said last night about Meridian's libraries. Not all of it was good, but all of it was good to hear, say the board members. There's just nothing they can do about it. Its rugged terrain and breathtakingly clear lakes make it a desirable destination year-round, which is why 2 Idaho senators decided to make sure its beauty could be shared for generations to come. A golden anniversary for the Gem State's Sawtooths. Well, tomorrow at this time, Idaho's abortion laws are going to look a lot different. On Friday, the state's criminal laws on abortion kick in. It begins with a 6-week ban known as the fetal heartbeat law. Next week, a far more restrictive ban is going to go into effect, which basically outlaws all abortions except for some very specific scenarios. That one is known as the trigger law, unless a federal court pauses that law on Monday. I guess we're going to have to wait and see on that. So how will any of these laws impact our medical community? Well, those health professionals are speaking out, expressing major concern with how this law, all of them, are written. To magnify their voice, over 300 Idaho medical professionals signed a letter expressing urgent concerns about how they do their job in regards to these new laws. The group is called the Idaho Coalition for Safe Reproductive Health Care. And today, hours before the 6-week criminal ban goes into effect, Joe Paris spoke with 2 Boise doctors who signed that letter.
As Idaho's 6-week criminal ban on abortion is set to go into effect on Friday, medical professionals across the state remain concerned about the second, more restrictive abortion ban set to go into effect in 1 week, August 25th.
We have significant concerns about what the total abortion ban means for normal patient care.
Dr. Lauren Miller and Dr. Kylie Cooper focused their work on maternal fetal medicine in Boise. The pair is 2 of more than 300 doctors, nurses, and healthcare professionals that signed on to this letter, calling attention to glaring practical issues they see with Idaho's near-total ban on abortion.
Basically a public service announcement to say this is what we're really worried about, both for ourselves as physicians and how we're going to take care of our patients. And so a group of us at the coalition got together and wrote the letter and decided to publish it in the local newspaper.
To be clear, the concerns expressed in the letter are not meant to be political in nature. They are practical concerns. The letter reads in part, quote, "The total abortion ban and fetal heartbeat abortion ban, as they are currently written, are dangerously vague and excessively restrictive." Dr. Miller details one example.
So in the total abortion ban, they define a clinically diagnosable pregnancy. So terminating any clinically diagnosable pregnancy is punishable by imprisonment for 2 years. A clinically diagnosable pregnancy to us as healthcare providers means many things, right? Any type of pregnancy, no matter how abnormal it might be, is still a clinically diagnosable pregnancy. So that means I could be charged for completing a miscarriage that still had a heartbeat, but the woman's hemorrhaging in my emergency department and it's in her best interest to get that done with for her. It could be that she's got an ectopic pregnancy. There could be a fetus implanted in her fallopian tube and a cesarean section scar, you name it, somewhere outside of the normal place for a pregnancy to be. It's still a clinically diagnosable pregnancy. That's not medical language that we use. And that is where the fear lies, is that doing our normal day-to-day job puts us at risk, that if there's a prosecutor out there who wants to get involved and say that we ended a clinically diagnosable pregnancy, having that law signed and in our Idaho code puts us all at risk.
Idaho medical professionals continue to speak out on their concerns with non-medical language being in the law, something that complicates crucial decisions that doctors need to make quickly.
As a medical provider, we have ethical obligations, which include do no harm, to act in the best interest of the patient, to support their autonomy and decision making. And these laws have caused a lot of conflict with those oaths and the morals that we hold as medical providers. And it certainly keeps me awake at night.
Some language in the laws leave gray areas about when a doctor can do an abortion, the pair says. And the consequences of making a life or death decision on a moment's notice is complicated by the threat of a prison sentence if someone outside of the emergency decision disagrees with an abortion decision weeks later.
In the total abortion ban, it is simply to prevent her death. Death is never certain until you are dead, right? There is a huge continuum where we know it's a possibility. Again, take ectopic pregnancy, for example. If we go back to data from the 1800s, 60% of women will die from their ectopic pregnancy. Is, a 50% chance of dying enough to intervene? Is a 20% chance of dying enough to intervene?
To be clear to skeptics, the pair explains that they see serious pregnancy complications very frequently, not just once in a while.
We see ectopic pregnancies in general OBGYN clinics every single day. This is day-to-day normal activities for an OBGYN to care for complications. About 1 in 4 pregnancies ends in a miscarriage, extremely common. Again, thinking back historically, the #1 cause of death for women before we had modern medicine was complications from childbirth. We do not want to go back to that, right? We have modern medicine to prevent us from ever having to watch a woman die.
So, where does the group go from here?
It's our hope that we're able to inform the public and to explain the nuances of pregnancy, to impact future legislation to try to reduce the harm that will come from these bans.
Assuming the total abortion ban goes into effect next week, is to continue gathering support, to work with the legislators to likely have to introduce a new bill this year to addend the total abortion ban, to put the correct medical language into it, to have the opinions of the public put into it, to make this a safer law.
Listening to them speak, Joe, it seems to me, and I know we talked about this, it's almost as if the lawmakers didn't bother to consult any doctors when they crafted these bills. And other than the women who are pregnant and needing an abortion, they're the ones that are going to be most affected by this.
And that's some critical feedback we've heard from the medical community for weeks, including in this story, where they feel that if there was more of a seat at the table while the laws are being drafted, and again, this would be back in 2019, 2020, that they feel they wouldn't be in this gray area or this nightmare scenario, as one doctor told me, where they don't know if they're in an emergency situation, if they're going to go to prison for saving someone's life. Now, if you ask lawmakers, some lawmakers will say, we built in some gray area into the law because we trust the doctors, and we're not trying to go after all the doctors for making the right decision. So we left that gray area so them, as the medical professionals, can make the right opinion. So the whole thing, though, is very complicated because in the sterile environment of the legislature versus an emergency situation, it's very different. So if you've heard from the doctors and the other 300 that signed on, they want a seat at the table, and they want to be there with lawmakers outside of politics to make sure that practically this law functions correctly.
And it could get tossed out, not tossed out, but at least put on pause as of Monday.
As soon as Monday, we'll keep an eye on it.
All right, thank you very much, Joe. A library district board meeting, usually about as exciting as the name suggests. Well, last night in Meridian, their library district board meeting was far from boring. Maybe it had to do with the 200+ people packed into the meeting room to share their views on their community library. The first item of business, swearing in 2 new trustees by reciting an oath, where they solemnly swear to support the Constitution, both the U.S. and the Idaho, and faithfully discharge the duties of a library trustee according to the best of their ability. Well, those duties, at least last night, included listening to more than 2 hours of testimony, including from several members of the Idaho Liberty Dogs and a group who call themselves Concerned Citizens of Meridian, who wanted to be clear, they weren't there to dissolve the library district or to ban books.
But we are here to do what we can to ensure that the library conforms to the wishes of concerned citizens of Meridian, especially responsible parents who want to protect their children from the Marxist indoctrination that seems to be sweeping our country.
We believe that this insidious growth that's happening in our world must be stopped in its tracks. And one way we intend to do that is by restricting the kinds of subversive materials available to our children in our libraries.
Today, our libraries have permitted evil influences to enter its premises. By evil, I mean the increasing influence of the satanic community's belief system.
And you know what else? As a taxpayer, I should be responsible for what my money supports. My money does not support grooming children, showing private parts in a library to 5-year-olds, men and women, men and men on top of each other. This has nothing to do with being gay. I know that that's everything some of these people are about. They have no personality outside of gay.
I just don't like other people's
ideologies being crammed down my throat and them trying to force me to accept their evil behaviors.
Not banning. Sounds a little bit like banning, maybe. I don't know. Maybe a little light censorship. Either way, the dogs and the other concerned citizens were overwhelmingly outnumbered as the board heard stories and testimony about how much the library and all of its books mean to Meridianites.
Public libraries are such an important piece of our democracy that we all need to be defending our libraries to the ends of the earth. I'm so thankful for libraries. I'm so thankful for what you do and that you're dealing with what you're dealing with today. And I just want you to know how much it means to most of us.
And my name is Dom Joel Smino. I'm a proud Meridian citizen. I'm a Christian. I'm a conservative. I'm a parent. And I'm gay. The accusations of grooming, a common dog whistle by bigots, implying that being LGBT is a choice. I can speak from personal, profound spiritual experience that it is not a choice.
I use the library a lot with my children. We use the book It's Perfectly Normal when my husband was deployed and I had to teach my children, my sons, about sex ed. It was not a very comfortable topic when it came up when my husband was on a ship, so I used the book. As a responsible parent.
All right, well, she went on to say, as a responsible parent, you're responsible for your family, and what you choose for your kids, well, that shouldn't be pushed upon the rest of us. Neither side wants to be imposed upon, apparently, which sounds like a standstill. In essence, it was last night a standstill because there would not be any decision made last night on books on Meridian Library shelves because that's not what the board does. They simply set the criteria for the collection development policy. The librarians decide what books get into the building, and the criteria they use, well, it's on their website for all to see. Things like diversity, appropriateness, public demand. It was a point made clear by the library district chair last night, who told us today they were more than happy to listen to the concerns of those who showed up, even if they can't really do anything about it.
Normally, very minimal attendance at our meetings.
Like 0, like 5?
Sometimes 0, sometimes 1 or 2, very rarely more than 2.
We will begin with the first item on our agenda.
It was a very unusual meeting for us. In my time on the board, I've never seen a turnout like that.
Hi, I'm Melissa Hatt.
You made it clear last night, the board, your job is to set policy, but not choose books.
Mm-hmm.
What did you take from last night?
We're precluded as a governmental entity to set limitations based on viewpoint. For us to restrict books would be a First Amendment violation, not censorship. We understand that parents are concerned about what their kids are reading. We strongly encourage them to be involved. Our expectation is that parents will know what their kids are checking out. So we have tools that allow them to do that. They can add their email to their child's library and see when books are due and what items are on hold. They can log into their child's account and see what's being checked out. So all kinds of tools for parents to be involved. That's our expectation. We're not a child care facility where a parent can drop off their kid unattended. Our expectation is that parents will be involved, and we have tools to help them do that.
As it stands now, according to current Meridian Library policy, you can count on your librarians to help you find any of these books, take you through the checkout process, or even deliver them directly to your home, all without a single question about how old you are, and certainly not with any effort to speak with your parent before releasing the book to a minor.
Of course not, right? We have a First Amendment right to read whatever we want to, and people have privacy, right? It is a limitation on First Amendment rights if I say it, well, what are you checking out and why? And checking your age. People should be able to check out the books that they want to without interference from a governmental entity like a library.
What about the suggestion that they don't want these books banned or even removed, but just kind of set aside into a special section?
Sure. So many of the books that they've brought up are in the adult section, but for us to place a book behind the counter and say, you need to show us your ID and prove your age before we'll let you have that book is pretty clearly a First Amendment violation, right?
So there is a legal aspect to it.
Absolutely, and the Nampa Library faced that back in 2008.
Calling for the removal of 2 books, The Joy of Sex and The Joy of Gay Sex.
Like all the body parts are detailed and everything kind of a stuff. It's very pornographic books, essentially.
They attempted to do a policy like that, restricting a book, placing it behind the counter if people had to ask for it, and they faced some pretty costly litigation, so they rescinded that policy. These are not new issues, well tested in the courts.
As somebody who's been involved with the Meridian Library for as long as you have, what was it like to sit there and hear words like indoctrination, grooming, Marxism being thrown at you and your library?
Our youth of today are being targeted by irresponsible adults who wish to indoctrinate them.
What we want is for the sexualization and grooming of all children to stop once and for all.
Who want to protect their children from the Marxist indoctrination that seems to be sweeping our country.
My money does not support grooming children.
More socialist Marxist ideologies will be infiltrating our public libraries, which I find appalling.
I mean, that inflammatory language is unfortunate, but it's not well thought out. It's not really considering what's happening at libraries and how they're actually used. I spend hours there every month. I talk to a lot of families that are using the library. I hear a lot of great stories about the meaningful impact that the library is having in their life and the value that they get out of it. So it just doesn't feel like they're in the same world that I am. I think often folks that have a real negative view of the library haven't been to one in a while. And we will continue to try to help people feel comfortable in the library and get their own family's needs met. There's no two families that come in the library that have the same views and values about what kids should read, right? Everybody is a little bit different. We want to meet the needs of all of those families.
Okay, so now what? Well, as you heard, the board is very limited in what it can do when it comes to removing or restricting access to books. But they are super excited about the new branches they're about to build. Megan mentioned last night the board received 50 written comments within the past week. 49 were in support of a diverse and inclusive collection and the freedom to read. Now, to be clear, most of the books brought up last night aren't even in the children's section of the library, and a few aren't even in the Meridian collection. Megan reminded us, if someone does have a problem with an item, there's a reconsideration process, which is also detailed on their website. It starts with writing a letter to the library director. At one point, Megan told us, the concerned citizens of Meridian submitted a list of 53 items they wanted removed and restricted from the library. A list they sent to the board, not the library director. One more thing, the book Gender Queer was the only book to get a reconsideration request. It went through the process, and that result wasn't appealed to the board, so that book remains in the collection. But that doesn't mean the book remains in the library. There's quite a wait list for Gender Queer, likely due to the attention it has received lately. It's probably the most iconic view of the Gem State. Just Google Idaho, and other than the outline of the state, you get these majestic images of the Sawtooth Mountains. Well, on Monday, the Sawtooth National Recreation Area is going to celebrate its 50th anniversary. It was on August 22nd, 1972, two senators from Idaho, Frank Church, Len Jordan, proposed a bill that would later designate 756,000 acres of land as a recreation area and to assure the preservation and protection of the natural, scenic, historic, pastoral, and fish and wildlife values and to provide for the enhancement of recreational values associated therewith. Some pretty strong words. With more people discovering the area, its natural resources, well, were becoming threatened. And Congress approved that and officially established the Sawtooth National Recreation Area to protect it. There are more than 40 jagged peaks standing taller than 10,000 feet, more than 700 miles of hiking trails that lead to the more than 300 high elevation lakes within the Sawtooth National Recreation Area, which is why it's such a popular spot for Idahoans and tourists alike. Its establishment as a national area was not, though, too popular among Idaho lawmakers lately. Last session, a resolution to recognize the upcoming anniversary passed the state Senate unanimously, but it struggled in the House. Probably because Representative Ned Burns' original resolution included references to future wilderness areas in Idaho. So he took that line out and then reintroduced the bill, but still several lawmakers took issue with the fact that the current land, the Sawtooth land, is federal land. So that resolution failed. And according to Idaho's legislature, there will be no recognition of the upcoming 50th anniversary. But there will still be celebrations happening all weekend long, so it's still happening. Tomorrow, the Sawtooth Interpretive and Historical Association is going to host a forum and lecture series focusing on the cultural and natural history of the Sawtooths. Then on Saturday, there's going to be a community celebration in Stanley, at Pioneer Park. Then on Monday, the day of the anniversary, there'll be a number of events throughout the day. You can find more information on their website. We'll have a link in our website. That's sawtoothra50th.com. A lot of comments today, and we love to see it. We're going to do our best to try to get to as many as we can, starting with this one here from Mikel. I appreciate you airing interviews with doctors and how the abortion ban may affect patient care. This is not a political issue. It's a ban on life-saving health care. Right to life should look at the health of the woman, not just the fetus. Mikel happens to be an RN. Doctors shouldn't have to delay potentially life-saving care so they can interpret a poorly worded law. That delay in care now would not meet normal and accepted medical standards of care. If your wife or daughter was harmed because of a delay, you would file a malpractice suit. Frightening to be a doctor right now, says Gene in Eagle. Ray says, Brian, it sounds like the doctors in this segment do not want to get rid of the law, but they just want it clarified, which is interesting to him. But I also sound like maybe they don't want to dip their toe into making laws, but just kind of help them clarify it so they're not, well, hamstrung by these laws. So the same people who refused to wear a mask during a pandemic, shouting, "We will not conform," are now demanding that the Meridian Library conform to their beliefs, asks Jeannie in Boise. Do the people censoring the rest of us even have library cards? I'd like to know. They're not afraid of books, they're afraid of knowledge. Well, I did ask one Liberty dog last night if he had a library card and how many times he'd been in a library. Doesn't have a library card, doesn't even have kids. Can't remember the last time he was in a library. We'll see you tomorrow.